Recording in progress.
Always got the personality.
Where are we going to go?
Stop being my budget after Labor Day.
Awesome.
I haven't worked in Germany years ago. 30 years ago.
Good afternoon. It is 5:30 on Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. I would like to welcome you to the Tompkins County Legislature. If you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance, flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call of members.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar. Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Mike Sigler. Travis Brooks. Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Rich John.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Present.
Shauna Black.
Here.
We have 12 members present.
Thank you. This evening, we do not have any presentations of proclamations, petitions, or communications and notices. We will have an executive session this evening. We have 5 different topics: real estate, litigation, collective bargaining negotiations, and 2 personnel matters. Now, let's go ahead and open it up for privilege of the floor for the public. If you are here in the public and would like to speak on privilege of the floor, please feel free to fill out one of the blue forms that's located in the back, on the back table.
We have one virtual.
Okay. We have one virtual speaker, Mr. Rocco Lucenti. And before you get started, I would like to read the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. Number 1, an individual may speak no longer than 3 minutes. Number 2, a speaker will not raise their voice. A speaker will not use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. Number 4, a speaker will not speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about job performances of named county employees other than elected officials. Number 5, after 3 minutes, a speaker will leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. Number 6, a speaker will not cause a disruption, and if asked to leave, will leave the chambers. Mr. Lucente, would you like to start your speech?
Yes, thank you. At the November 1st County Legislature meeting, Mike Sigler brought up the defamation of my character by an employee of Tompkins County. He called for an independent review of the incident for the answering of both legal and ethical questions. In response, Veronica Pillar blatantly libeled me with several false defamatory statements. She called me a white supremacist, accused me of using alt-right rhetoric and displaying hate symbols. She claimed that I do not recognize people's humanity. All of these claims are vicious lies. The white supremacist one being particularly ironic given that my family's Jewish. She then says that it's incumbent on everyone to shut down people like me if I put out my opinions publicly. And if county employees are doing that, she would commend that and is disappointed that some see it as a problem. This is not the first time that Pillar's hatred of the other has resulted in her deploying rhetoric designed to harm people. In September of 2020, Veronica Pillar's Ithaca Democratic Socialists of America attacked a peaceful gathering of Donald Trump supporters in the city of Ithaca. 2 women were injured in the attack, including the dislocation of the shoulder of a 64-year-old woman. Pillar's rhetoric directly leads to this sort of violence in our area, yet she persists. Make no mistake about it, the Ithaca Trump rally riot was our January 6th, and Veronica Pillar was the guy outside standing on the guillotine yelling, "Hang Mike Pence." Her rhetoric is designed to silence those who disagree with her, to motivate violence against them. That is exactly what it has done when conservatives have attempted to peacefully gather in our area. This is just another example of a theme which has become all too common in this county since the election of Donald Trump in 2016. Bigotry against those who disagree with Democrats has become the norm. The imposition of consequences against those who dare speak out in favor of conservative values has become the standard. This is why Deidre Cross was fired at the direction of the county. This is why your employee libeled me in an email to Tompkins Weekly. And this is why Veronica Pillar deploys vicious lies designed to motivate violence against me and people like me. Ithaca wasn't always this way. I grew up in Ulysses. Jim Dennis was my legislator. I had regular conversations with him. I had multiple lunches with Peter Stein where I brought up issues like property taxes and public safety. I spoke in front of legislatures chaired by Martha Robertson and Mike Lane without any reservations whatsoever about being attacked as a result of expressing those opinions. But that's clearly not the Tompkins County that we live in anymore. We now live in a county where county employees pressure publications to fire people.
You're coming close to the line about speaking with our county employees.
Yeah, you're taking out my time, and I haven't named an employee, so I don't appreciate the interruption. We now live in a county where employees pressure publication to fire people for the crime of covering an activist with an opposing view, and county legislators support it. There are no Jim Dennis's or Peter Steins left in this room. It is extremely disheartening, and I condemn county leadership for their defense of this heinous conduct. Thank you.
You're done. Thank you. Anyone else here for public comment this evening? Okay. Next, let's move over to municipal officials. Is Patrick Mailer here this evening from the city of Ithaca? Okay. I do not see Patrick. Okay, legislator privilege of the floor. Randy Brown.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I attended the Veterans Day ceremony in DeWitt Park on Friday, and Lisa Holmes was there as well as some other people from the city of Ithaca. It was a good event, and the Star Spangled Banner and another song were sung, and it was really incredible. Very, very good voice the woman had. But it reminded me as to why I say the pledge. And it's about respect for people that have given what they've given, and how they have, my relatives going back many generations and others, and how they sacrificed without asking. And we send these young boys, men, into these wars, and they come back in mental and physical disabilities from that. And that's why I say the pledge. It's about a respect for them. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Randy. Amanda Champion.
Thank you. I wanted to just take a minute and thank our Tompkins County employees. Next week is Thanksgiving, and we should appreciate our employees all year round, but I thought this might be a good time to just say thank you. We have over 700 employees. These are the people who come to work every day. They work 9 to 5. They work longer than that. They make sure our technology works. They look over policies for us. They check the law to make sure we're in compliance. They work with people who have mental health challenges and come to offices. They help moms who don't have money and need some help with getting food. There's so many things that Tompkins County employees do, and these are the people that really make this operation run. The 13 of us, no longer 14, we're just here to make some decisions and support the work that they do. We're all generalists. We're not specialists. The people that we hire to work in all these departments are experts, or they're becoming experts, or they're growing in their positions. I guess I just want to make sure that we all remember that these people are the ones doing the work. And I appreciate them very much for everything that they do every day to keep this going. And they're really the true servants of our community. And yeah, so thank you to them.
Thank you, Amanda. Yep. I have Mike Sickler, Ann Corman, and Deborah Dawson.
Well, I just wanted to congratulate some of the people who won on Tuesday. Leah Webb, it will be our new state senator. I'm very excited about that. She frankly won because of Tompkins County. So clearly the folks here in Tompkins wanted her to represent us, and it'll be interesting to get to meet her and see what her ideas are on making our community better. I want to congratulate Mark Molinaro. He's already been to Ithaca, which is great. I took him through the homeless encampment. He got to see that firsthand. Had some, I think, pretty great suggestions on that. And I like the fact that he comes up from town government and from county government. So I think really understands us here at the legislature better than most people would. Locally, obviously, Anna Kellis, reelected, and Derek Osborne and Maureen Reynolds. So congratulations to all the victors, and congratulations to all the people who did not win. Rich David, I thought, ran a great campaign. Was a great mayor for Binghamton. Is frankly beloved, I think, in Broome. Ran a great campaign, and I think a fair campaign. So to all the people that came up short this time, stay involved. And you never know. Next time, you may be the victor. Who knows? So thank you for everybody that was involved. And to our elections people who frankly, can count apparently a lot better than some of the other states around the country. So.
Ann Corman.
Thank you. I also attended one of the Veterans Day celebrations. This one was at our county airport, and this was putting the grand opening, even though it's been open for a while, the military lounge. So it's for military and veterans from all branches, and they had also just a phenomenal presentation and service there. And I just want to say they had people that have served, and I just want to make sure I say that people from all genders and the gender spectrum have served in the military. There was a woman there who served in World War II in the WACs, drove a truck. So that was pretty cool to meet her. And there was, I won't mention the folks' names, but we had a couple of employees lose everything that they had in a new field at a home fire. And so that there's an email that came out from Lisa on the 14th, and there's a GoFundMe page just in case that hasn't crushed or hasn't come up. You haven't had a chance to read that, so please take a look at that. And just want to say my heart goes out to them, that they lost. The fire started pretty quickly. I went and read a little bit about it, and they just had time to get out themselves, it sounds like. So hopefully we can help them a little bit. And thank you, Lisa, for letting us know about that. Lastly, we got notified from our county clerk, Maureen Reynolds, that the DMV commissioner from New York State is going to be at our Tompkins County DMV this Thursday at 11 a.m. And I plan on attending. And I just wanted to start a new thing to make sure that at least some people show up for various events, So just want to know if there's a show of hands of people that are going to try and show up for that. That's 11 a.m. I talked to Mike Lane. We're going to see if maybe F and I can end a few minutes early so we can run over there. So at least 3 of us. Okay. Thank you. And if you hear of other events, feel free. I encourage you to bring them up here to make sure that somebody shows up to these events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. Deborah Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't say the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. I've never felt that I was pledging allegiance to a flag. I pledge my allegiance is to the Constitution and the form of government in the United States. And frankly, at this point, we are not a country with liberty and justice for all, and I'm not going to pay lip service to that. However, I spent over 30 years in federal service, and I served in the U.S. Army Reserve. And I show my respect for our veterans, our federal employees, and the people that make our government run by supporting policies at every level of government that provide the services and opportunities that these people need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Mike Lane.
Yes, there was a veterans ceremony in Dryden, too. They always hold it rain or shine. The veterans ceremonies all seem to be at 11 o'clock on the 11th month of the commemorate the armistice from World War I. It means a lot to the veterans to have people attend, and we have government officials and people on the street that come, and a lot of our veterans and our veterans organizations are getting older, and they need some of the new blood from some of the more recent veterans in their organizations. We just went through an election, and I couldn't help thinking about some similarities of the election with 1864. And that was the year that Abraham Lincoln was reelected. He didn't think he was going to get reelected. He was very unpopular. He'd only been elected in 1860 by a plurality. He told people, he says, I may not be around here to be reelected. Some of his advisors said, cancel the election. You have emergency powers. We're in the middle of a civil war. Cancel the election. But he said no. He said, what will make this America strong is to show we can have an election despite the rebellion, despite the people fighting to preserve the enslavement of African-American people. And he got reelected, even though things weren't going terribly well in the Civil War at that time for the North. It is, as Deborah just said, we owe our allegiance to our government. And the flag is a symbol of that government. It is our Constitution. It's our Declaration of Independence. It's our checks and balances. A few weeks ago, we watched the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in England. I couldn't help thinking about the stark differences where they pledge allegiance, they pledge their support to their king or to their queen. We did away with that almost 250 years ago. We support government, we support the laws. And that's what makes us different. That's what makes our democracy better, and what we need to think about every day. We had an election. We have severely divided people right now. We've got divided government again, with the Senate being taken over by the Democratic Party, or retained by the Democratic Party, and the House being probably taken over by the Republican Party leadership. But we will survive that. We've had divided government before. And we just need to lower the rhetoric and make sure people understand that it is all of our government, the good with the bad, and we will endure.
Thank you, Mike Lane. Lee Shurtleff.
Not to be left out, I appreciate hearing from my colleagues of their participation in the Veterans Day ceremonies. I was at the Groton service, post 800 American Legion, which celebrated 100 years as an organization just a year ago, formed slightly right after World War I. And my father was a longtime member of that post, was a veteran in World War II, and we've attempted to carry on that tradition there. We have one Legionnaire who's still very active. Our last World War II vet, he's 96 years old, and reminds us of that era, and reminds us of why we take pride in that local organization and in the day that we celebrate and honor those veterans. So I too want to add my part to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone else this evening? Mike Sigler?
I forgot this one other thing. Just kind of for your all information, for the public's information, Tamara Scott, who has served as the Republican Commissioner of Elections for the last 2 years, is going to be leaving that position. She is going to be moving out of state with her husband and children. So there will be an election for that, just like you guys do on the left side, the right side. We're going to have an election. It's scheduled for December 12th. Whoever comes out of that election then will be brought before you for approval, and then we'll have a new Republican Elections Commissioner. I want to thank Tamara for her service. She, I think, has done a great job over there. It seems like the staff really likes her, both on both sides. Not that being liked is the ultimate, but she seems to recruit good people and does run elections that I think are hard to pick apart, which is kind of what we want. So thank you, Tamara, for your work. And like I said, December 12th is when we'll have an election for that, and then we'll see who comes out of that. Thanks.
Thank you. And it looks like Tamara Scott is here and has her hand up if she would like to say a few words.
Oh, there you are. Sorry about that.
Oh, is that
well,
the cursor? Okay.
Well, I did not put my hand up.
Sorry, I think that's the cursor.
Sorry, but
Who do you have there?
yeah, I enjoyed my time in Tompkins County, and at the Board of Elections, great group of folks there, and everybody I've worked with at the county has been wonderful and very helpful with my many questions. And my daughter says hi.
Hi. Hey, kiddo. Okay, well, thank you for your service. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Veronica Pillar?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that bike shares come back to Ithaca, if you haven't noticed. A bunch of white e-assisted bikes around. You may remember the Lime bikes. I think I'm more excited about these because it is a locally run operation. I've gotten to ride them a couple times, including downhill in the snow to get to this meeting, so I do apologize for being late because that was a little scary. But the bike worked great. They're very smooth. The interface is easy to use. They are making you take a photo when you park it to try to keep people from leaving them in the sidewalk, so that's very great. And, as part of our effort to get people driving less and choosing other modes of transportation more, if you think that riding a city bike might fit into your life in any way, I encourage you to hop on one and try it out.
Thank you, Veronica. Rich John?
I hesitate to jump into this discussion about the Pledge of Allegiance, but here I am. Randy, thank you for your comments. I essentially align with those. I think that saying the pledge is a sign of respect to certainly the men and women who've served our country, and sometimes at tremendous cost. But I think it also is a declaration of our commitment to a common purpose and a devotion to the democratic system. I understand the reasons why some of our number don't say the pledge, and I agree with you completely that this is not a perfect union. We strive to make it a more perfect union, but we're not there yet, and there's much to complain about. And I also recognize that the Pledge of Allegiance was developed by a private company, I think in the 1920s, and frankly, it's not all that I think it should be. If I was writing the pledge, I wouldn't write it the way it's written. I don't like pledging to the flag, but I understand it's a symbol, and a symbol of our commitment and our oath to the Constitution, both New York and federal. it is also in our charter, which means it's difficult to do much about it without changing our charter. But I would propose maybe we should think about that. Given the number of people on this legislature that have elected not to say the pledge, something's wrong here, and we should, I believe, start our meeting with some declaration of our common purpose, and we're not doing that. I would propose perhaps that we could write our own pledge. There's nothing that requires us to say the traditional Pledge of Allegiance, but we could make a statement regarding our commitment to our constitutional responsibilities and our devotion to the ideals that we strive for in our country, even when we don't meet them. I'd love to hear some thoughts on that, whether that would be something my colleagues would entertain and spend some time on.
And 14 of us agree on.
I'm not saying anything on that would be easy, but I'd love for us all to stand up and say something in common. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Anyone else for legislator privilege of the floor? Okay, thank you all. I'm going to move on to the chair's report. This evening, I have the special pleasure of introducing one of our employees who has been recognized at the regional and state levels for his work, Mr. Zach Geedy, who is here this evening and works at our Department of Emergency Response as a dispatch supervisor in the 911 Center. Zach has been named the New York State Dispatcher of the Year, and we have a certificate of recognition to honor his achievement. By all accounts, Zach has shown great commitment to our organization and the community, with several instances that note his responsiveness and great care during specific 911 calls. Zach is also a volunteer serving as the Assistant Fire Chief in Newfield. Let's congratulate Zach on his achievements, and we thank you for all that you do for Tompkins County. If you could please come forward, we would love to hear from you.
Speech.
I'd like to thank everyone here in Tompkins County, state of New York, the APCO Atlantic chapter that recognized me and this county for an award. Goes out to my bosses that submitted me for the award. I'd like to thank my family for putting up the long hours that I've put in over the last few years. So thank you again, appreciate it. Thanks.
Donna?
Yes.
If I could just add to that, Department of Emergency Response is one of the government functions that the county runs that is fortunately not contacted by most of the citizens. But when they need it, it's there. And having had a chance to go up and sit and listen while these calls are answered, it's a steady stream of requests for help for fire, for police, for medical assistance, for just, crisis. And they do a great job 24/7. So it's really wonderful that one of their number got such wonderful recognition, but it is just a really important function for our county, and thank you.
Thank you, Rich. I also wanted to thank our Board of Elections and hundreds of poll workers for their efforts to make us having a safe, free, and fair local election run smoothly last week. It is a large effort each election, and we are lucky to have such committed individuals ensuring this process ran smoothly. On a much different and more somber note, I want to briefly address the increased reports of acts of hate and anti-Semitism in our community. Hate symbols have been found in several places, and recently on the Ithaca College campus. We do not stand for such acts of hate and bigotry. Thank you to the community members who have reported finding these symbols, and to the institutions for calling out this behavior and working to address hate and build bridges and foster belonging. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend our last legislative meeting due to an illness, and I'd like to thank Vice Chair Deborah Dawson for filling in. I want to offer my thanks to Bangs Ambulance for allowing me to attend a ride-along with them on October 20th. I met with staff there who was able to set me up, and I was able to see how our local county 911 dispatches the calls and how it showed up on the boards at Bangs. The evening I volunteered was quite busy. I followed one of the head paramedics, Tracy, in the Bangs fly car. We were called to the scene of an overdose in the afternoon, and when we arrived, 3 Ithaca police officers had already arrived to the scene first. All 3 officers were providing ongoing CPR and had administered multiple doses of Narcan. I can't describe in words what it was like being in a small place, in a small space with everyone taking a role to try to revive this young person. IPD continued chest compressions as Bangs and Ithaca Fire Department intubated and found a central line to give medication. After 20 minutes on working on this young person, they were able to establish a pulse. They were then taken to Cayuga Medical Center via ambulance. Minutes after that incident, another call came in, and we hopped in the Bangs fly car again and went to Cayuga Heights. We were met by the Cayuga Heights Fire Department, Captain George Tamborelli, and he explained the situation. The individual was in a ravine and non-responsive. Cayuga Heights firefighters, Bank Ambulance, and Ithaca Fire all worked together seamlessly to rappel down to the individual, and in the water, they rendered CPR. They then used ropes to bring the individual up and into the ambulance. As I sat in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, I sat in amazement at how the work was so emotional, both mentally and physically exhausting, and was also reminded that I had only been working for 4 hours. I also considered how our law enforcement, emergency, and fire services do this every single day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. A few days after, I read online that the young gentleman that overdosed that evening did not make it. I want to express my heartfelt thoughts to his family. I can't imagine the pain that they're now feeling. The one thing that I took away from my ride along, whether it be with our sheriff's department, our fire department, our local ambulance agencies, sitting in the 911 center, is we are so fortunate to live in a community where we have individuals who are professional, considerate, kind, and have a passion for helping others. When there is an emergency, each agency arrives ready to work and do whatever it takes to have a positive outcome. I've heard about the sisterhood and brotherhood within these agencies, and I definitely saw that in effect. I want to say thank you to the Bangs family, Tracy, Mel, Justin, and George, just to name a few, for taking care of our constituents and also sharing this incredible experience with me. Now let's move on to our special topical presentation. This evening we are going to hear from Kit Kephart, who is our Commissioner of the Department of Social Services, and she's going to do a presentation this evening on Code Blue sheltering.
Hi, thank you, Shauna. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I can figure out how to get where I need to go here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me. I'm Kit Kephart, Commissioner at the Department of Social Services here in Tompkins County, and I'm going to talk about our sheltering program. Our regulatory direction around housing assistance and sheltering, as you know, comes from OTDA, the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, and the Department of Social Services works in tandem with our contracted homeless shelter provider, St. John's Community Services. We are members of the Continuum of Care in Tompkins County, which works to establish housing supports for homeless individuals and families in our community. And I was asked to talk about the New York State Code Blue program that we administer here locally, so we'll start there. To give a full picture of homeless services, I'll also speak to some of the resources for sheltering that are available in a few minutes. So as people probably know, when someone is homeless in Tompkins County, they come to the Department of Social Services. DSS will help them apply
for services and help them either by arranging for them to be sheltered by St. John's or by assisting them with one of several programs that may help them to prevent becoming homeless by paying back rent or preventing eviction. One of the options for people is Code Blue sheltering, and Code Blue is available based on weather conditions. Code Blue sheltering was made available back in 2016 by then Governor Cuomo through an executive order that required that counties shelter persons who were identified as homeless when the temperature outside is 32 degrees or colder with wind chill. In Tompkins County, people or families are sheltered under these conditions when they choose to be supported by this program. However, they're always encouraged to apply for temporary housing assistance, which provides other services in addition to sheltering, like case management, to support them in ending the cycle of homelessness. Code Blue sheltering is a night-by-night program. However, OTDA has supported limited planning, which allows us to provide Code Blue sheltering in a planned program roughly from about October 15th every year through April 15th. Without this, it can be very difficult to actually establish staffing and make sure that we have a solid plan, including locations for sheltering. Code Blue eligibility is based on a self-report of homelessness and provides protections for people living in places that are not meant for habitation or have no other warm option. Social Services encourages each person that relies on Code Blue sheltering to apply for other economic assistance programs. There are some people that kind of consistently refuse. They really only come in for that Code Blue sheltering. And so this program is really vital for keeping people sheltered when the conditions are dangerous to be outside. Social Services in St. John's do our best to reach out to people on a continuous basis while they're sheltered to encourage them to seek additional services, mental health, substance abuse, counseling, or simply permanent housing. However, the connection can be difficult for people that simply are accessing Code Blue sheltering. Sheltering for Code Blue clients can happen at a variety of locations. We currently have a 19-bed homeless shelter in Tompkins County, and people may stay there depending on their needs. However, and I'll show you some data in a moment, we use congregate sheltering often for this population. We typically do this at churches or other locations that have large open rooms, and we typically use cots for people to sleep on. Some are sometimes sheltered at a local hotel. However, this can be challenging and not always the best option for people. People that are sheltered in a congregate setting often go to the shelter location in the morning to shower, eat, and do laundry. This next slide gives us a picture of the Code Blue utilization over the 7 years since Code Blue sheltering was enacted, including this year so far. We use the term bed nights to describe the number of beds utilized in a given time period. On this graph, we're showing per month. The average number of persons sheltered each night throughout the month is the number of bed nights divided by the number of nights in the month. So I'll show you more granular details here in a minute. You can see on this graph that the numbers in 2019 were the highest use of Code Blue sheltering so far, and significantly higher in January, February, and March. In the Code Blue season that spanned 18 to 19,
can I
the
ask
shelter
a question?
was using...
Sure.
Sure.
Sorry, thanks, Kit. We can't see or at least I can't unless my eyes are that bad, blurry from meetings, but we can't see the numbers underneath, or I guess those are years?
I'm sorry, Ann, that you can't. So they are numbers. So it starts over here on the left with November of 2015, although the first blue bar that you're seeing is actually January of 2016, and it goes all the way to June of 2022. And if you, I believe that the presentation was sent to people because I knew that this would be very difficult to see. I will show you, or maybe I should just go to the next slide here, which will give you a little bit better way to look at not as large a span of time, but it gives you a bit more information in the last couple of years. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So again, to kind of review the history quickly, Code Blue was started mid-season in 2016. It was not widely known about. You can really see those numbers rise in 2018. And then there was a lot of use in the 2019 to 20 season. We were primarily at that point, so I'm kind of explaining here what the history is and why you see the numbers that you do. We were primarily sheltering in local hotels, which had a real appeal with this population at first. And then we started using congregate sheltering, which has been a much better option for a number of different reasons. It also is slightly less appealing, but it's still providing quality care for people. And for some people that may have risks like overdosing, it oftentimes is a safer option. The 2021 season brought an increase in numbers, but were also impacted by fears and difficulties during the pandemic, which altered our numbers a bit. Sheltering happened with an expectation of things like wearing a mask and temperature reading, which was really unpopular. And the Friendship Center had limited numbers of people that it could serve at given times, which lowered utilization. People were more likely to couch surf during those years with others that they knew, and many agencies that encouraged people to seek relief from living rough were closed or providing low or no outreach. In addition to all of these factors, congregate sheltering was available. However, it was more limited than in the previous season, and implementation of congregate sheltering followed recommendations from Health Department and OTDA based on the waves of viral infection. Finally, last winter, we saw Code Blue sheltering numbers rival that of the 2018-19 season. As the pandemic and additional measures like mask wearing receded, and more people were sheltered in hotels due to significant challenges in staffing now due to the labor shortage. So as you can see, there's a number of different things that have affected sheltering over the last couple of years. Currently, we're planning to implement congregate sheltering this winter. However, hiring to provide adequate staffing is continuing to prove pretty challenging. And social services has worked with St. John's and OTDA to increase rates of compensation for staff, to stabilize shelter staffing and appeal to those that would apply to work this winter for the congregate program. We've seen some improvements, but finding staff to hire that are willing and able to work is a continued focus. So on the slide you're looking at, this really shows how bed nights break down into the average number of people that are sheltered each day of each month of the Code Blue sheltering months from 2018 to this year so far. You can see that while the last two seasons, 2019 and 20 and 20 and 21 numbers were lower, they've risen again so far this year to numbers that are similar to the 18-19 season. And remember that when it indicates that there were, for instance, 96.2 people sheltered on average in January of 2022, that is reflecting only the people sheltered under the Code Blue program in our county, not the overall number of persons sheltered in all of our programs in our county due to homelessness. Because of the way that the numbers are kept in the HMIS system or the homeless management system, it is difficult to show exactly month to month how many people were sheltered under each program. Some people are not always going into sheltering per se, they're going into various kinds of programs or housing. But if we take the last quarter from July to September this year when Code Blue was not in operation, the census showed that we were sheltering 148 individuals on the last day of the quarter. When we compare this to the end of the same quarter the year previous, we see that this year shows a 60% increase in numbers of people in shelter compared to last year. We've seen this trend really increase over the past year, and it's typical to see the numbers of people seeking shelter really drop off over the summer. However, in the past summer months of this year, we were sheltering between 60 and 83 people typically, which is much higher than past years where we would see anywhere from 30 to 50 people typically in the summer. So speaking a bit more broadly across all shelter programs, in addition to the increases in people seeking shelter, we're also seeing some demographic changes to the shelter population. This slide shows us two areas that are trending upward, that of increased women seeking shelter and families seeking shelter. Historically, the largest population that sought sheltering were single males. However, we're really seeing families and women seek shelter to a much greater extent than we've ever seen before. It is impossible to really know exactly why this is, but certainly we have seen an increase in applications for our supplemental nutrition assistance program, our temporary assistance program, the heating energy assistance programs. And we know that families are struggling with lost jobs, inflation, healthcare costs, and housing expenses, and just generally increased stress and complexity of getting by financially. So the other change that we've seen over the past few years are people that are working that are unable to afford housing that are also seeking shelter. While the population of those seeking shelter that are employed is really still very small, and I don't have an exact number of people currently, it's a trend that we had not seen much until the last 2 seasons or so, and it's concerning. With an increase in our rental support programs, we've been able to assist more of these people than previously, and I'll talk a little bit more about those programs in a minute. So in the past quarter, just a couple of other statistics to kind of throw at you. In the past quarter, 35% of people sheltered reported domestic violence concerns. 33% are reporting mental health problems or concerns. 29% struggle with a substance use disorder, and 12% are reporting a chronic health condition. So these challenges come with increased pressures on both individuals and families, as well as those trying to assist them, as the pandemic has temporarily or permanently closed upwards of 700 mental health treatment beds and almost that many beds for substance abuse treatment across New York State. The needs are really great these days, and the challenges in providing supports to people in need are also tremendously limited and difficult. So there are many challenges, not the least of which is that homelessness in Tompkins County is increasing, as it is in almost every county across the state. Sheltering is intended to be a temporary option for people, and we can provide that either through the Code Blue program or through the temporary housing assistance or other economic assistance. Regardless of which program somebody enters shelter through, we in Tompkins County make every attempt to work with individuals and families from a housing first model. This means no matter what the challenges an individual or family has, we believe that without stable housing, they cannot fully stabilize. So that becomes the goal. And the goal really is to limit the amount of time that people spend in shelter and to assist them in finding stable, permanent housing rather than reside in the shelter for any longer that's necessary. So housing, as you know, is difficult to find in Tompkins County, and the challenges of finding housing on an extremely low income or no income is even greater. For single individuals that only qualify for safety net, they often have extended stays in the shelter while they attempt to find sheltering or housing that will support them at $400 or less shelter allowance provided through that program. To compound this, there are some people that struggle to manage independently without regular case management and supportive housing, which is even more limited. Temporary assistance is available to primarily families and comes with supports for housing. However, even with the increased benefits that families are allotted, it can be very difficult for people to find housing at their benefit rates in our community. So we find that additional supports for housing are needed. Fortunately, this slide shows us that there is some good news in housing support programs over the past few years. For some time now, we've applied to OTDA and received the STEP, or Solutions to End Homelessness Program grant. We've asked in the past from the legislature for supplemental local dollars for this program, which we've always graciously provided. And this program has been very successful in assisting primarily families over the last decade by allowing us to provide 12 months of supplemental support that declines as the person's income increases. The other program that assists people has come online during the pandemic is the Emergency Solutions Grant. Again, this provides rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention components, paying rental arrears and helping to stabilize people or families after a housing crisis. People must be earning below 30% AMI to qualify for this program. We're hoping that Tompkins County might qualify for additional ESG funds, although we're not sure they will come our way. And this program the ESG program will end at some point. And then just coming online in the past month is the rental supplement program, which is new. Again, this is long-term funding through OTDA that provides both prevention and rapid rehousing. We anticipate right now and are being told that it will be renewable, very similar to STEP. And you may remember this program from our budget presentation, as it was one of our over-target requests that you kindly approved. We received around $400,000 for this program. However, it comes with a small local component. And we've just learned that there may be a small addition that we can add to this program specifically for adult protective clients. And I'll likely be talking to you about that in January if that becomes a possibility. So in conclusion, homelessness is increasing, and the complexity and intensity of challenges that families in our county face has increased considerably over the past few years. The challenges that staff have in meeting those needs is also greater. However, we are also working, as we have throughout the pandemic, to keep families sheltered with a focus always on finding permanent housing and establishing stability where it's been lost. While our county's market for housing is tighter than some, we're not alone in the need for safe, affordable housing for individuals and families that are in the low to extremely low income group. We will continue to work to serve people that need sheltering, and whenever possible to prevent the need for shelter by preventing homelessness altogether. So any questions that people have, I'm glad to answer.
Thank you very much, Kit. Mike Lane.
Hi, Kit. Wow, that was a great report. Learned a lot. Nicely delivered, too. I was kind of wondering, who are these people? Are they folks that have grown up in Tompkins County? Are they people that have gone to school here? Are we attracting people from other counties to come to Tompkins County for whatever we can provide for them? What are sort of the demographics?
So that's a good question, Mike. And what I will say is that we still see predominantly people from Tompkins County, or I don't know if I could tell you whether or not they've grown up here. What I can say is that we are still seeing predominantly people that have been living here for some period of time, at least 6 months, a year, or longer. Many of them much longer than that. But there is a bit of a transient population that we also see, and I think that New York State in general, when I go to commissioner meetings, I hear other commissioners talk about some influx from other locations, whether it's one county to another or whether it's from state to state. So there is a bit of that. I think there always has been, but I think with Code Blue sheltering, there is a bit more of that. That I think is much more curtailed when we are using congregate settings for sheltering. Because the appeal, of course, is, a hotel room. I think that does attract more people. But I would say that it's a bit of both. I don't have an exact number, and it's unfortunately with the Code Blue sheltering, there is some data, but one of the unique characteristics about Code Blue is people we always try, like I said, to get them to apply for temporary assistance. That not only gives us a way to help them with greater support, but it also provides us with a lot of information about where are they coming from, what are their needs, what kinds of things are they struggling with. The problem with Code Blue is really all you have to do is come in and say, I'm homeless, and we are required to shelter you. So we always pursue that, but it's a little bit difficult with that population to get some accurate data on whether or not they are local. But we do eventually get some of that information as, if they are sheltered for a period of time, they're inevitably interacting with us and the shelter staff, and we typically learn a little bit about them.
Thank you.
Mike Sigler?
Hi, Kit. I actually have two questions. In your experience, how close is the relationship between homelessness and mental health, say, or substance abuse? I mean, is it, I'm talking kind of like almost like a percentage. Like, is it 80% of the homeless have one of those two issues, something along those lines?
It's typically the numbers that I had quoted, I think are what we see, that we're typically seeing in that between high 20s and up to like 35% range for both substance. I would say the people that identify openly about substance use tends to be a little bit lower than mental health. But again, one of the concerns that I have with this population, Mike, is that obviously much of this is based on self-reports. There is some part of the population that when they come in for sheltering, they already have a mental health provider, or they've gone to substance abuse treatment, or they've left substance abuse treatment, and so we learn about that. But oftentimes they're self-reports. So I would predict that it is higher. I don't think I would probably say that it's as high as 80%. We're probably talking more in the 40s maybe. But it's a little bit hard to speculate accurately, honestly, because of how these programs work.
So from the sound of it then, for 60% of the people, the only thing we really need is housing. That would be the big service for them. Okay.
Yes. And I think the other reality is that when we think about housing being the stability indicator, although some people are certainly going to have a chronic mental health condition or a substance abuse condition that continues to be a problem for them, I think that with stability, we see a lot of those problems subside for people. It's oftentimes the fact that their lives are unstable, and that they are homeless that either creates, additional problems or perpetuates them. So,
I guess my second question would be then, for right now, what would be the number one, and not to put you on the spot here, but what would be like the number one actionable item that you would think? I mean, something that we could turn around in a year, for example.
So I'm always hesitant to answer this question because I don't really know, but what I would say that we are really always short with is we need what I would call SRO, single room occupancy housing. We are desperately in need of places where people can live independently and can live very inexpensively. So places where there might be a house that is providing a room for a number of different people that can live there, maybe with shared facilities like shared cooking and shared bathrooms. Places like that where people can reestablish independence. Ideally, what I think commissioners across the state talk about is that there ideally would be a support component to the program where you have staff going in there and supporting people and helping people with applying for benefits or getting treatments or doing those kinds of things. But even if that's not possible, just providing more SRO rooms in our community would be a huge help. Historically, not that many years ago, we had a number of landlords. They weren't always our favorite places, and I'm sure they weren't most of your favorite places, but anybody on the legislature. But there were landlords that were renting to people in more of that kind of setup. And what we've seen is probably due to cost, but probably also because there were landlords that had just kind of filled that niche. And those landlords have largely, aged out of providing those services. And so we really don't have much of that resource in our community now, and it's a hole, it's a gap that we don't have.
Thanks, Kip.
Randy Brown and then Lee Shurtleff.
Thank you. Thank you, Kit. That's a lot of data and a lot to consume there. I have a question. You showed there were 19 current homeless shelter beds right now. Is there more than that, or is that? it, and the rest is all hotels, or?
So currently our shelter, and I hope I'm using the right number, they expanded a couple of years ago, and it might be 20, I can't remember, but it's in that range. The shelter is, we have a fairly small shelter. So they're in that range, and then the rest of the sheltering is provided at local hotels, and then with the Code Blue population at these congregate sites. So yes, that's really that's our setup right now. Is those three options, even though it's a variety of different locations.
What do you mean by congregate sites?
Congregate sites, so that was kind of what I was talking about in the presentation. So what we do is the shelter typically contracts with local churches or other organizations where they set up in like a gymnasium, or they some churches have like a big open room, and they go in during the Code Blue season. They go in, set up cots for people. It's staff. They have a couple of staff that stay overnight, and people go to sleep on the cots, and then everybody goes back to the shelter typically in the morning. Some people go off and do what they want to do, but typically they go back to the shelter in the morning, and they shower, eat, do their laundry, and socialize at the Friendship Center. So those congregate sites are sheltering in an open format using cots.
So the people that go in hotels, is there any assistance for food, for meals, or?
There is, typically it's more independent. That's one of the downsides with Code Blue sheltering, is that we don't have a way typically to provide them with very much, but when people are sheltered through one of the economic assistance programs, they are typically eligible for, and even when they're in Code Blue, they're typically eligible for SNAP. If they're sheltered through one of the economic assistance programs, they actually get a food allotment, and they're getting they're able to use that money to provide to be able to go seek food. And the hotel has some facilities. Some of the hotels have some facilities for heating food up and keeping it cold. And then of course we have great providers. The Salvation Army and Loaves and Fishes are always providing help to people. And we sometimes have to piece together. So during the pandemic, when we had people in isolation or quarantine, we were working with Salvation Army and Loaves and Fishes to have meals delivered. The shelter has a food pantry that can provide supports for people with food. They will typically get a box of breakfast food to supplement what they're getting from Loaves and Fishes. And we can set that up. Sometimes we have somebody who really is, maybe they're disabled or they're unable to travel outside of the hotel on a regular basis. So we will ensure that they are getting deliveries of food.
Okay, that's it for now. Thanks.
I have Leach Shurtleff and then Travis Brooks.
I appreciate Mike Sigler's question about actionable items and Kit's response with regard to the single room occupancies. And Kit knows, and we've had the discussion before, I am very, very much aware of that as a need, and can appreciate the role that that type of housing has been able to fulfill. And this is more comment than it is question. And I would, if this were to be an actionable item, and I think it should be, my encouragement to everybody is that there be very close attention paid to the proximity of support services for those populations as they're moved to these sites. And I think that that has been the one downside that I have seen, is that just because of the market forces, the population has ended up, unfortunately, in places where the community may not necessarily be strong enough to provide all that's necessary, and it may require more outreach on the county's behalf through a variety of mechanisms. My one comment. The other is that this has been a very enlightening presentation, and I would like to have a copy of this, and I think probably other legislators would, because this is useful for having a community conversation out my way. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And Kathy will send that out electronically to all the legislators.
It was already.
Oh, okay. That was quick.
I was studying the applications for the Community Recovery Fund and missed it. Thanks.
Travis Brooks.
I have two questions and then a reminder to folks. One, what is the last time I checked, the rental assistance for a bedroom for somebody was around $287 from DSS. Is that still close to that? If not,
So Travis, you're hitting the nail on the head here. It's gone up, but not very much, and not there are very few. There have been very few increases to that over the years from New York State. So typically, right now, for somebody who is in that safety net population, so those are single individuals without children that need sheltering, they're receiving between $380 and $400. The $380 comes into play typically when people have had some sanctioning or there's been some issue. So they typically start off at $400, but they sometimes end up at $380 because of the sanctions, which we try to do as little in this county as we can of that, but we are required to do some. But it's really wholly inadequate. And again, part of the reason I think that we have lost that market of that kind of niche that was being provided by a small number of landlords for a period of time is it was more possible a decade or so ago to have an SRO set up where you are getting that small amount. And now that really doesn't cover the costs, even if you've got, a group of people living in a location where they're all contributing with that amount for a room. So it's really unfortunate that hasn't gone up. Part of what the state has done is through this new rental supplement program, they're trying to provide additional monies to help supports for people. And of course, with temporary assistance, when people are applying to those economic assistance programs, we can provide a much larger amount. It's still tight for families, but they can be provided a much larger amount depending on the family configuration and how many people there are. So they're getting a lot more than $400, and housing is much more easily attainable. But those single people are really struggling without getting additional supports.
Thank you. And how many people who utilize Code Blue utilize the shelters on a regular basis? Well, actually, probably more towards Code Blue. How many of those folks would you say are sanctioned or ineligible for services? And really, there's certain services they can't access through DSS.
Yeah, so again, it's a little bit difficult to know because with Code Blue, we don't always get all the identifying information to be able to match it up with the other economic assistance applications. So we don't always know if this person that came in during Code Blue is this person from the economic assistance program. But I would say it's somewhere around 30% is my guess of people that are coming in during Code Blue. That does not mean that people are coming in all winter for Code Blue sheltering. Oftentimes we see a population of people that only come in, on the very coldest nights. After a lot of the people that are eligible for it, they really rough it out for a couple of months when the winter starts. And then when we really see the temperatures drop or weather becomes extreme or things are wet, then we see that population come in. So, and we do at the Department of Social Services, we do outreach on a regular basis all through the year to the population that is out there on the streets or in the encampment. But we're one of the rest of the outreach team in the community that all work together to really provide services and help people access.
Thank you. And here's the reminder, just Thursday is GX Annual Harvest Fest dinner. Folks can sign up ahead of time and pick up meals. Tomorrow is the last day to sign up to pick up meals. People can show up the day of and get meals, but it's limited. We start passing out meals at 4:30. As of yesterday, we were up to 600 meals ordered ahead of time. I think last year we went through 850 meals. Since we stopped doing it in person, our need has gone up. And most folks that take advantage of the meals are folks that, are homeless and really struggling. So that's just one night of how many meals go out. So we anticipate this year doing about 950 to 1,000 meals.
That's great. Thank you, Travis. Any other questions or comments for Kit? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Kit.
Shauna, one more quick thing that I just want to leave you with. When we talk about congregate, or when we talk about the SRO rooms, I feel like I would be remiss without saying that is not, so there's some great state funding out there to start some of those kinds of programs typically with ESHI money, but that is not funding that DSS can apply for. It's got to be, like a local nonprofit. And certainly one of the things that I am acutely aware of right now, both because of the just the exhaustion that people have post-pandemic and the challenges of the labor market right now. I know at DSS right now we're down about 15 positions that we can't fill completely, and I know that our local nonprofits are in the same boat. So one of the things that I just want to say is that I think there will be opportunities for us to seek that funding through our nonprofits in coming years for the rental supports. But unfortunately, I think right now people have been kind of tapped out because of all the challenges these days. So they're hopefully in the future, some of that will come online.
Great. Thank you so much. Your presentation was wonderful, and I think it was very informative for all of us. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, next we are going to move on to, I actually see Patrick Mailer here from the city of Ithaca. Hey Patrick, how you doing?
Doing well. It's snowing, so I apologize if my hair looks so shiny and wet.
It's all right. What's going on in the city?
Yeah, so I've got a real quick report for you all in terms of City of Ithaca, and then happy to answer any questions. Firstly, our budget is passed. We passed it last Wednesday. There are lots of things in there, which I'm happy to go into detail on any particulars. I think the ones most relating to the county at the top of my head are $100,000 for homelessness initiatives, and then we also set aside another 54 or so thousand for a part-time coordinator. I know you all have a full-time coordinator as well. Besides that, our tax rate is slightly going up to $11.98 for every thousandth buck of assessed value. It's about a 9% and change increase in the levy. Besides that, the city administration schedule is not out just yet, but in terms of planning and economic development, I can tell you of a couple things that we'll be having an update on unsanctioned encampments. We'll be doing an update on short-term rentals, an update on adult recreation cannabis use. We'll be looking at some redevelopment agreements relating to Ithaca Gun and their property over by Fall Creek. We'll also be looking at a new public safety facility. And then finally, we're looking at a couple of sustainability things changing within the charter with our commissions. So happy to answer any questions. I will do my best to give you the best answer I can.
Thank you. Deborah Dawson.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick. Quick question. Do you have any idea when you all will finally get around to approving the Criminal Justice Center's work plan for 2022?
I don't have an exact answer for you right now, but I know our plan was to do that in a special meeting of council, and then we ended up not passing the budget on the 2nd, whatever that first Wednesday was. So we used our emergency budget meeting on the 9th. That would have been a special meeting of council to talk about CJC. But I don't know, my hope and expectation is that we have that done before the end of the calendar year.
You don't
So-
have a lot of time left.
I'm aware. But yes, our hope is to look at that and do it quickly.
Thank you, Deborah. Anyone else? Questions for Patrick Mailer from the City of Ithaca? Okay, thank you, Patrick. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, we have reports by County Administrator Lisa Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Lots going on, but I wanted to just do a brief update on reimagining public safety. Mona Smiley isn't with us tonight, the CJC coordinator. She is at PBA Community Engagement Roundtable this evening, so we don't have a slideshow, but I just wanted to give you a couple of updates on her behalf and on behalf of reimagining what's happening. We are in the process of the review of data analyst applicants. The timing of that had been deferred in part because of the waiting for the approval of the CJC work plans with the city and now with some civil service timing. But we're sitting down. We have a committee that's going to be reviewing those applicants. There have been the committees or the work groups have been, there's been some convening around the community healing plan, officer wellness, traffic calming, and starting to plan for the mental health co-response with law enforcement for 2023. But again, my understanding is that our city partners are going to be voting on both the 2022 and 2023 work plans at their December 7th council meeting. And there have just been concerns on our part that we haven't been able to progress without knowing the financial commitment of the city for the current year. And the vote on the work plans has been deferred or rescheduled multiple times. So I just wanted to bring this to the legislature's attention. So the 2023 work plan, we're hoping to, I mean, that's future oriented. The 2022 work plan, of course, we're in the 11th month of 2022. So it's somewhat hampered our ability to move forward. That's my report.
Any questions or comments for Lisa? Deborah Dawson?
Yeah, I don't mean to beat on this horse, but I am really kind of concerned about the CJC and the city's contribution because it's my understanding this has been scheduled several times. It keeps getting pushed back. The city's taken a position, especially when we were negotiating that CJC agreement, they didn't want to give us any money unless they could review the CJC work plan every 3 months, which is kind of ridiculous. It's very difficult to plan a program like this when you don't know from quarter to quarter whether the funding's going to be there. Is it your sense, Lisa, that they will vote on both 2022 and 2023 when they finally get around to it?
Put the chat up there.
Okay. Great.
7th meeting.
2022 and 2023. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. Meanwhile, what's Mona been able to work on?
She has been, like I said, meeting with community partners. She's been trying to put work groups together and convene the work groups to do planning ahead on the plans that I mentioned. So and she's trying to do the best she can with what we've got. I'll say that. And we're trying to proceed certainly with the data analyst, and so that's moving ahead.
Thanks. I'd just like us to send the city a strong message that we really want to see them step up and deliver on our partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. I have Rich John and then Travis Brooks.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Patrick for following up on that so quickly. And it's good news that the city is planning to take that vote and get that work plan processed. But Lisa, I also wanted to say thank you for the news about the data analyst. You know, this has been a work in progress, and we're doing all of this for the first time. It's complicated. We're doing it in combination with the city, which, you know, we both could do a better job at, but I'm happy to hear that we're making progress. I believe the data analyst position is one of the most important things we'll be getting in place to really help us understand this issue much better. So you and I had talked about trying to proceed as quickly and go as fast and far as we can under the circumstances. So thank you for getting us that far.
Thank you, Rich. Travis Brooks.
I do want to thank Moni, even though she's not here, in her determination to make this happen. You know, it was difficult to get the community healing plan and the healing plan with IPD together, and she was approached by the PBA to work on healing for the community and the PBA, the IPD PBA. And she met and made a commitment to work with the PBA to get that done. And tonight is the first meeting. So she's working and working hard to make this happen. And even though there's been some issues with getting that done the original way, she's found ways to work with folks to make it happen anyways. So I just want to give her some shout outs.
And I don't think we ever questioned Mona's ability or what she's doing, because I think we all know that Mona is working her hardest. I know that she's had a lot of barriers that have been put up, unfortunately, not due to her hard work. So thank you. Okay, any other questions for Lisa Holmes? Thank you, Lisa. Next up, County Attorney Bill Troy.
I haven't given you a detailed report in some time, but I'm going to change that this evening. We've been sued in the federal court in Buffalo. It's an action brought by a pastor who owns firearms and believes in them firmly. And as you may know, in a recent law passed by New York State, it was made illegal to carry weapons into churches or places of worship. And they claim that they're concerned about their rights, and they brought what is essentially a declaratory judgment action, claiming their civil rights are at a threat of being hurt. And it's brought against Chemung County and us, Tompkins County. Now, as I understand it, if you canvassed...
Can you speak into your microphone a little more, Bill, please?
If you canvass every single police officer, deputy, sheriff's deputy, they don't know anything about this. So it's a group of people who have this very high-powered law firm from Washington coming in. There's big money behind it. And they've already brought one suit, and they've been fairly successful so far. But they brought this one that we just got a few days ago. So I plan to circulate this to you folks tomorrow. It's public information. Don't panic, whatever you do. They're really just trying to establish that they have a First Amendment right to carry the firearms they want, that they're entitled to carry. The DA down in Chemung County, Weed and Wetmore, and our DA both have signed letters to the judge or affidavits basically saying, we have no intention in the world of prosecuting one of these cases. So it's really not as urgent a matter as you think it is. We'll have to see how this works out. But that's new to our plate.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this is a Buffalo organization that's suing?
It is an Elmira preacher, but Elmira is in Chemung County, which is in the Western District of New York. So it's been assigned to a judge with the improbable name of Judge Sinatra.
But I'm trying to understand how an Elmira organization has standing to sue Tompkins County.
And because they have a church up here as well.
Okay.
I left that out, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's not as big as their operation down in Chemung County. And we got a judge over in Buffalo. We had a conference today, and he's pushing. He's already ruled once that these folks or people like them have the right. The Second Circuit's going to take the case. This whole thing could be over fairly quickly. but a number of counties are taking the position that it's really up to the state to defend this, because they're also a defendant named in this, because it's the state that passed this law. Tompkins County had nothing to do with it. Tompkins County, as I say, I don't think the deputies even know about it. And our DA has said, even if they go to make an arrest, I will not process it, because there's already one federal court decision out saying that you can't arrest them because that's an invalid law. It's very much fluid.
And the remedy would simply be that there would be no enforcement, or that the law would be?
That it will be declared to be unconstitutional.
Okay, thank you.
What concerns me is that these big law firms come in and they put the meter on for a couple of grand an hour, and they come to the defendants to pay. And my position is, we had nothing to do with this. We're not doing anything. Why should we be paying this ultimately? So I'm trying to get someplace where we can really minimize that quite a bit. That's my fear. I'm not afraid of them declaring. We have not been acting unconstitutionally at all, and there's no allegation of that.
Mike Ziegler?
I guess my question, something similar to what she said, was that, I mean, this was a state law. I guess that's the part I'm getting hung up on.
They're afraid because we're the law enforcement who could arrest one of these people in this church. I think it's too attenuated, but this is where I am. We got these papers several days ago, and I was already on a conference today with the judge, and he wants to decide this in 30 days or 40 days or something like that. And he will, because that's what he did with the last one. So, but I'll keep you apprised as things go on. We're very passive in this thing, I think. As I said, a number of other counties have said, this is the state's problem. We'll just do whatever the judge says. Number two,
Mike Lane, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wondered, is this the same judge who declared the redistricting process illegal?
I've never come across him before. He's very young. He's considerably younger than I am, which
I know it was in
disturbed
Chemung County,
but
and I just wondered.
I think that was Steuben County.
Oh, that's right, it was Steuben. I'm mistaken.
This is a federal judge
But he
sitting
would
over in
have
Brooklyn.
jurisdiction there as well.
Western District of New York.
This is a judge sitting in the Western District. He is a federal judge, district court
Oh, it's a
judge.
federal court?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Secondly, we have a case coming up for trial in April involving one of our sheriff's deputies and excessive force. We're getting ready for that trial. It'll be in April before a magistrate judge and no jury down in Binghamton.
Bill, can you talk a little bit louder?
I'm sorry.
Yep.
There is a case now pending in the U.S. District Court in Binghamton. Parties have agreed, Mr. Kopko and I, that we will not have a jury trial. We'll do a bench trial, it's called. We agreed to a magistrate judge who's, I think, a wonderful guy. And we should have a very fair trial in April to see what the story is, whether we used excessive force or not. I'm feeling confident, but I can't predict the future. We do have a case, the case I may have mentioned at one point, back in 2007. A employee of the state from Binghamton fell down some steps on the front of our courthouse and either broke her leg severely or her foot or broke a toe. That's really what the case comes down. It's not clear whether there was a storm going on, but nothing happened in the case until fairly recently. In 2016, the lawyer wrote Jonathan and said, this woman went in to have an operation, a very young, nice woman, and she's dead. The operation went bad. And the parents were
From
substituted.
a broken toe.
No, from some surgery in her stomach. I'm
Oh.
sorry. So it has nothing to do with us.
Oh, okay.
And then the mother and father are appointed for the estate. The mother has died. Our employee who was shoveling the stairway, he has died. So this case is really, it's good to stay away from this case, I'd say. So I am going to speak to you, I think, in executive session about something involving this case. I don't want to get too much more into it. And finally, I just have to deliver some minor news to you. There is a program in effect whereby people with the right qualifications can have their septic tank replaced at little or very minimal cost. A number of people have signed up, and I was approached by the folks who run it, Thoma, I guess it is, and there are two women who have children who work for the county, and they were concerned about a conflict of interest. I talked to them about it. I sent them letters saying there's no conflict of interest. It's fine. They're comfortable with it. But their rules require that I report to you that this happened. And that's it. As I say, I will speak to you more about the slip and fall case.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Okay, thank you. Next up, Director of Finance. This is Rick Snyder's last report.
This is my last hurrah.
We hang on every word.
Unlike Bill Troy, I can predict the future. 2 weeks from today, I will no longer be your finance director.
Try not to look so sad.
I'd like to thank especially my staff, 12 people who are golden and that have worked, some of them just a couple of years, and they haven't even gotten to know the real Rick Snyder. One has been here longer than me, just one, and that's Lisa Christian, your payroll supervisor. The only one that remains from all the folks that were here when I first came to Tompkins County. The other 5 or 6 in the middle are employees that have been here 5 or 6 years. They'll all be asked to move around, change their jobs, and take on additional tasks in the next few days and weeks. So thank you to Drew and to Lori, Morgan, and Lisa Christian, Joyce, Daryl, Julie, Mindy, and her husband, Mark. She'll appreciate that joke. And Leanne, Michelle, Lisa Schott, and Betty. Like I said, they're golden. You better treat them well. They're here to serve, and they have served Tompkins County well. I appreciate them very much. And the last 2 things that I really had to finish in this past week, just one of them got done today. We finished the PFC audit for the airport. I signed the management representation letter for that. So we'll be getting the final draft. That's the last of the 5 audits. Ready to start again for 2022 audits. But not with me. Oh, I'm supposed to cry. And we also submitted the last data request for the cost allocation plan that Vineskin Company is doing. So that final report will be issued probably in December. And those are the last big projects that we're wrapping up. Thank you for allowing me to serve as your finance director, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Rick.
Donna, can I say something?
Sure can.
Rick, I want to thank you for your years and your dedication, mostly your dedication over all those years. And as people have mentioned before, burning the midnight oil, evenings, weekends, and doing all it takes. So I really do appreciate that. And wish you really well and spend more time with your family. And in your retirement, I hope you can enjoy more of your life that way outside of work. I know you really have a good relationship with your employees, but I wish you well in retirement. I know you're going to they're having a retirement party for you over on the 29th at 11:30. Just reminded folks at the old jail, and I'm going to be traveling that day, so I'm sorry I'm going to miss it. But thank you very much.
Rick, you are the single person that I know that is so excited about accounting. I've never met someone with a passion for accounting like you do. So thank you for bringing that to all of us. You actually make your report fun. And we thank you for that, because sometimes our work is not fun. So thank you. Okay. Let's move on. Are there any?
I thought we were going to get some good sales tax news or something.
Well. Okay. Moving on. Are there any resolutions to be added or withdrawn from the agenda this evening? Okay, let's move on to our consent agenda. And for the first time in quite a while, we are going to do regular votes with hands this evening. No more roll calls. So.
Well.
Consent agenda, resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, Resolution A, authorizing 2023 payments for Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget, ID 11289. Resolution B, authorization to participate in various contracts led by any government entity of the United States of America, ID 11237. Resolution C, authorization to sign drafts, checks, County Administrator, ID 11236. Resolution D, authorization for Finance Director to make year-end transfers, appropriations, and budget adjustments as required, ID 11235. Resolution E, Town and City budgets and printing of tax rates, ID 11234. Resolution F, approving completed tax rolls and directing the executing and delivery of warrants, ID 11233. Government Operations Committee, Resolution G, correction of errors, ID 11160. Resolution H, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 07-02, Departmental Use and Administration of Social Media, ID 11270. Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution I, audit of final payment, Paul Vitale Incorporated Recycling and Solid Waste Center Pavement Project, ID 11245. And all those in favor, please. Oh, sorry, if I could have a motion to move. Moved by Amanda, seconded by Ann Corman. And all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you all. Now we will move on to standing and special committees. The Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as a reminder, we had ended up with 211 eligible applications asking for more than $32 million, and we have approximately $6.5 million to distribute. That means that literally we must say no to 80% of all the requests that are made to us. The committee met yesterday and today we voted on 141 applications in 3 hours. In the nerdy world of legislative committees, it was very exciting. We do not know yet how we will get from this first culling of applications to the final cut, but let me offer this. Of those 141 votes today, 53 of them were yes votes, and I just got to pause for a second here. We received just a little snapshot of information about what happened today from MRB Group, our consultant. And it wasn't clear what they meant when they said yes votes, but I think they meant a majority of the committee. So that's my little asterisk. So of those 141 votes today, 53 of them were yes votes. So if we just use those as the starting point to go forward, we would have reduced the total dollar amount requested by roughly 60%. Given that we need to get to 80%, that's a really good start. I can't give you any summaries at this time with any specific data of what those categories that received the most votes are. We need some time to take a look at all the votes that were taken today and all the data and kind of crunch them a little bit. Also, there are some nuances that we're going to need to work through. So, for instance, we can partially fund some applications rather than fully fund them. And that kind of work is going to require more than just a yes or no vote. And then some of the applications are going to require that they go through a seeker process, and there's some other additional review required for a few of them. So there's it's more that we have to do than just yes or no votes, and that's still to come. We are going to meet again on Monday, November 21st, and vote on the remaining batch with approximately 70 more applications to consider. The remaining batch are those with the smallest dollar amount, so that won't affect the total so much. You know, like I tell you before, we're in a good place to start with, and whatever happens on Monday, it won't affect it too much. It's pretty likely that we will have to schedule one extra meeting to figure out what to do with all those yes and no votes to come to our final recommendation. And then I wanted to thank all the committee members and the staff for persevering through an unusual and difficult committee process. I'm remaining optimistic that we're going to land at a good place when we're all done. And that is my report.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions for Dan Klein or comments? Randy Brown?
Yes, thanks, Dan. So how does the process work? So you approved or voted yes, I guess, for a certain amount. The ones that were voted no for, those will not be considered by the rest of the legislature? Is that how it works?
So we haven't fully decided on what we're going to do, but we had 6 of us, and we took a yes or no vote on each one. So if something got 6 no votes, you know, it's very unlikely that we're going to look at it again. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry if I misspoke. Yes, it's unlikely we will look at those again. If something got, 6 yes votes, there's a good chance it's going to advance. And then everything in between is still up for discussion. Now, the full legislature, each legislator can pull out any application they want when it gets to the final, when it gets here, and ask us to, consider that and vote on that. So that is a right we all have. It's going to be very challenging for anyone to do that, because if we vote on a new one and approve it, it means we have to subtract something else somewhere, and that's going to take a second vote. So I hope that answered your question.
Also, in looking at the MRB group's scoring, is the higher scoring got most of the high votes? Is that your theory? Or?
So for sure, we said yes a lot more we went top of the list from their high score to their low score. And for sure, we voted a lot more yeses on the top than on the bottom. But there was quite a bit of things that did not match their scoring. Does that feel fair to say, committee? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Greg Mezzi and then Mike Lane.
Yeah, I had a chance to watch bits and pieces over the last 2 days. And while I think, a little bit of a self-professed rough start, I appreciate everybody's work on that committee, because it's good work. We're in an incredible position to be able to do some real meaningful things. And to your point, Dan, we are going to have to say no to a lot of good things. But as Rich, John, and I have talked a little bit about, we have then all of these other opportunities that with our grant writer position, hopefully we can seek and find opportunity for additional funds for. If you haven't watched, if you're not on the committee, and you can give a couple of hours or put it on in the background, there's really some good information, some good dialogue, some good context, because as much as I would love to be part of the debate for every single one of those items, we really just can't do that. And I fully trust the members of the committee to fight it out in a way that's fair and that's principled, and to do the job that they've been trusted to do. So I can't say I'll totally 100% agree with everything that comes out of the committee, but I do feel very good about the way that we're approaching this process, and I hope we can really make a big impact. But if you haven't had a chance to watch some of the meeting, try to tune in, because it is important. It is important that we have a little bit of background, so that when it does come to the full legislature, we can move these projects through and start making a real impact in the community. So thank you to everyone who is on it, because it is a mountain of work, and I'm glad I was watching on YouTube and not sitting here. So bless you all for taking that on. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Greg. Mike Lane?
I agree 100% with what Greg just said. And I think that this is as fine an example of our having to delegate to a committee to do some real tough work and tough decisions that I can remember having. We've never had anything like this before. I did have one question, Dan. Were any of the applications amended to, say, reduce the amount of funding, or were they all moved forward at the amount that was requested?
That's a good question. We did not take up that question of whether we would want it funded the full or a partial, because that's more than a yes or no vote. That's like, do we fund it at what they're totally asking, or their minimum, or something in between, 10%? There's too many variables in that. So we did not do that. We just said yes or no. But I know that all the committee members, many of the projects, they thought, well, I said yes, but what I really meant by yes was I think we should do a partial funding of this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we haven't taken that step yet to actually say how many of those are we going to look at as partial fundings.
So it's still on the table?
It's still on the table.
Okay.
And yeah, thank you. Thanks for cutting to the chase there. And I just want to say more that the reason that I asked that we hold off on doing that extra work is because after we go through this first cut, we're going to have something much more manageable to deal with, and we're going to know how much more money we have to cut, and that's going to help us make those decisions.
And so, Mike, many of the applications had a maximum amount and then a minimum amount, and then there were some that said if we don't get granted this full amount, then we can't go forward with the project. And so for those that had partial, we actually said partial before the vote, that we would be open to that, and many of those we went ahead and did say yes to. I think Ann and then Deborah Dawson.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work for my colleagues and Dan for shepherding this committee. It is a lot of work, and we're figuring it out. Yep. I think you had said this, but you were asked like what the next step when we get to the legislature. So again, this might be exactly what you said, but so we're gonna it says, well, from the program, the policy, it says that we'll consider less than $250,000 grants will be coming as a batch, but a legislator could ask for one to be taken out, and then the ones higher than that we'll vote on individually.
Yes, that's correct. So there's going to be something like, I'm not sure, maybe 8 big money proposals coming, and we all will vote on each one of those.
Deborah Dawson.
I just wanted to commend Dan. I think I would rather go through 4 county budgets a year than chair this Community Recovery Fund Committee, because just trying to figure out the process and keep everyone happy, it's a bear. And I know that Dan has poured through hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation and given careful thought and tried to consider everyone's opinions on this and come up with a process. It's still a work in progress, and I just think it's exceptional work, Dan. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks for saying that. I mean, all the committee members poured through hundreds of pages of materials. So if I could say one more thing, part of the reason it took us a while to get started is because this was a different process than normal, and we could not afford to debate each one. We just couldn't. So everybody showed tremendous restraint. Most of the time, nobody said a word. We weren't trying to convince each other. If we did say something, we just said a very few sentences. That's how we were able to get through all that. So that's unusual for us, right? We like to debate. We like to try to convince each other, and we had to suspend that instinct for this process.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions for Dan? Comments? Okay. Moving on next, Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask my Vice Chair to do this presentation because I was not here yesterday for this meeting. So if Lee wouldn't mind and you'll all indulge me, I'm going to let him do it.
Thank you, Deborah. The Budget and Capital and Personnel Committee meeting was held yesterday, and Deborah, we were going to move this along. We had 4 able-bodied people that wanted to come up and help you and Ronnie finish your moving. And unfortunately,
We sure could have used you.
we thought about it. There were 13 resolutions that Budget and Capital had to consider, and several of them are reflected on tonight's agenda, both in the consent and under the individual committee report, and most of which were related to end-of-the-year processes for closing out the business of 2022. And the reports from the department heads and the administration we work with were quite concise. Lisa will be putting together a group to re-examine some of the nuances of the solid waste fee and how it relates to the not-for-profits and educational institutions, something that hasn't been touched in 30 years, but that was one part of the reports, more to follow. And workforce diversity will be meeting on the 7th of December, and we'll be reviewing their goals for 2022 and starting forward on the goals for 2023. So with that, unless there's any questions, we've got 3 resolutions here. And I'll start with Resolution J, Budget Adjustment, ID number 11282, Acceptance of New York State Healthcare Worker Bonus Funding. And that's a grant that's been discussed here previously, and some guidance was given to administration on it. I'll so move that.
Okay. Greg Mezzi, seconds. And discussion? We set, Lee?
I'm happy.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Discussion? Dan Klein?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is this the one that was announced a year ago and we're just implementing it, or is this a second round?
This was announced and part of the governor's 2022-2023 budget.
Did we do another one of these before, just for healthcare workers? Or?
There was another one that applied to the mental health department, and another one that applied to the Office for the Aging.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Discussion? Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, I think just to point out, this is about $217,000 that, amongst these folks, and most it looks like $3,000 awards or so. I think that's, that's a sizable amount. Not enough by any means to show our appreciation for the work that they do, but I just think it's important to note the amount for those maybe watching and not reading along.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you all. That passes.
Have Resolution K, ID number 11261, approval of the 2023 amended municipal cooperative agreement for the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium. So moved.
Seconded by Mike Lane.
If there's anybody that would wish to comment to that, I think Deborah and Lisa have a better handle on this.
Deborah?
Yeah, I just had a question about what exactly the amendment is that we're approving.
So each year, the Department of State requires that all of the members of the health consortium sign the enact the amended municipal cooperative agreement. And typically, and this year being one of the years, it just involves adding the new members, updating the new members to the consortium.
All right.
Any other questions, comments, discussions? Okay, I see no hands. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Have Resolution number J, ID 11277, adoption of the 2023 Tompkins County budget and 2023 to 2027 Tompkins County capital program. And I will so move and speak on it after.
Was that Resolution L? Is that what you meant?
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, these $600 bifocals don't work well.
Need a refund.
Back to the optometrist. Resolution L. Thank you.
Seconded by Greg Muzzy. Would you like to give a description or?
Yes. Everybody has in their resolutions and packet for tonight's meeting the final adoption of the budget and capital program. I don't believe this has changed greatly from what, other than some corrections possibly, from what the adopted tentative budget was at the completion of the expanded budget committee process. Main part here is resolved that the sum of $52,397,521 required to meet the local share of expenses and costs of county government in Tompkins County for the fiscal year 2023 is hereby levied and collected from taxable property of the 9 towns and city. Points to make: this is a approximate tax levy increase of 0%, which falls within Tompkins County's adjusted tax cap of 2.58%. as calculated according to the New York State formula. It sets the approximate tax rate at $5.65 per thousand of assessed value, and that equates to a rate decrease of 7.5% approximately, and a net increase of 6.69% in local spending. And just for reference, the adopted budget for 2022 had a tax rate of lost it. We went from $6.10 per thousand to $5.65. So it is a drop in the tax rate of 45 cents per thousand. And this change will result in a decrease of approximately of $102 on a median priced home assessed in 2022 at $225,000. And here's where I wanted to just kind of add in my perspective as one legislator. We had a median assessed value on the homes in Tompkins County last year of $205,000. Median value of a home in Tompkins County as of this point is $225,000. So significant increase in the property tax assessments. It notes that if your assessment remained the same or maybe even dropped, you will see a decrease in your property taxes of $102. But I would point out, for the average homeowner, they saw their property assessment go up a little over 10%. And consequently, with this decrease in the tax rate, it would still reflect about a $20.75% increase if your assessment had stayed level at $225,000 this year. So a little bit of an increase for those that sat at that median value who hadn't experienced any increase. My point to this is several things, and I've had to look at this really carefully as we went along. And I've had some spirited conversations with Chairman Dawson on this, on the effect on the fund balance. And I appreciate those, and I know moving forward, it's going to be a challenge for the legislature, and it really does affect, as Mike reminds us, have an effect on us if we see some downturn in the economy. We were at approximately the same fund balance in 2019 headed into the pandemic, before the cuts were made and before we suffered some challenges. So 3 years later, if this budget is adopted, we're going to be at about the same unrestricted fund balance as we were 3 years ago. We've had the benefit of a lot of relief dollars come in. That's been a good thing. That's helped save us. Some good things I see in this budget, in particular as a rural representative, not only were some things set in motion, some very expensive projects that include honoring the commitments for reimagining public safety and the green facilities moving forward, and some major adjustments made in order to continue to affect that. I was happy to see that, that we were able to put 2 deputies on the road, not just positions related to reimagining public safety, but some bodies into the rural areas. 2 dispatchers, haven't been increases in those in years. An EMS program coordinator to help us work on some of the urgent challenges that Chairman Black outlined for us earlier tonight. Some support to our smaller departments, Weights and Measures, Veterans Affairs, for example. Restoration of positions to departments that were hurt because of the projects that we had to do, including the library. A lot of give and take went through this process to get us here. And the main thing for me, I can support a lot of these additions in concert with there being a drop in the tax rate, because we've just talked about the $6.8 million in necessary funds that many agencies will see moving ahead as part of the COVID relief. But I come back to the homeowner and the struggle that they've got right now with the costs that we're experiencing in a gallon of gas, in a gallon of milk, in a gallon of fuel oil. A year ago, I paid $3.45 to fill a tank at one of my businesses. This month, I'm paying $6.05 a gallon and trying to negotiate that down. The point is, a lot of agencies, a lot of our population have seen relief, and just the same, I really believe through this process that we've got to get a little bit of relief to the homeowner, and this is one way to do it, knowing that it sets us up for some challenges moving ahead. It's been a long explanation of where I come from, but I think we saw some critical county needs addressed in this, and we are able to provide some relief to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Mike Lane, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thanks for that excellent discussion there, Lee, and the presentation. Almost seems when we get to this point every year that it's sort of a letdown, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we have worked so hard, our staff particularly, to get to this point, starting back in April, and we came to a proposed budget that was nearly unanimously recommended from the Expanded Budget Committee. I really want to thank our county administrator, Lisa Holmes, and certainly our budget officer, Norma Jane, for helping us here, and also the other staff members that worked. And we want to thank Rick for your input into the budget. Deborah, I want to really thank you for your leadership as the chair of the Budget Committee. You did a great job, and you brought us a budget. I know I don't think there's a person here that's totally happy with all aspects of the budget. But, you know, when you design a horse by committee, you may not get the tail in the right place.
You get a camel.
Or a camel. But we did a good job, and we'll start again very soon, and it may be different next year, but I think we can be very, very proud of what we've done here. And believe it or not, you can actually make an amendment to the budget tonight if you want to. Let's hope that that doesn't happen.
Thanks, Mike. Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, I'll keep it crisp in the spirit of the budget discussion. When we vote on this, could it be by roll call, please?
We can do that. Deborah Dawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your kind words, Mike. And for the reasons that I stated the last time we voted on this, I can't support this budget. You know, it started back in 2020, I guess, when everybody started saying, oh my God, look at our big fund balance. We got to do something about that. And we asked Lisa and Norma and their crew to present us with a proposed budget that started to whittle down that fund balance judiciously. And they did that. And then we all just piled on and came up with, oh my God, 1 million OTRs. And I don't object to the OTRs that added staff where staff was necessary. That's something we have to do. We have to provide services, and in order to do that, we have to have adequate staff. But there were a lot of Christmas tree ornament OTRs. You know, I like this program, let's give them some money. And we went around the room and we all did that. And I have a problem with doing that simply because I see that as a reflection of our tendency to think that we should substitute our judgment for the judgment of our professional staff and our consultants and our agencies like the Human Services Coalition, who tell us this is a good program and this one's not so good. And yeah, I understand we get elected to do some of that, but I just think we kind of went overboard this budget season, and maybe that was because we thought we had a big fat fund balance we needed to whittle down. But what I see us having done is create an operating deficit that we're going to pay for out of one-time money. We can't keep doing that. I don't think that's good fiscal planning. I don't think that that necessarily serves the long-term interests of our taxpayers, because if in fact all the pundits of doom are right and we're heading into a really bad period for the global economy, that's going to show up in the cost of services and items that we have to provide, and it's going to impact our revenues and our fund balance, and I just don't think that's sustainable. I dread the possibility that by artificially holding our levy down, we're setting ourselves up to have to really increase it in a big way at some point in the next few years. I don't think that that's going to make our taxpayers very happy. And finally, I keep banging on this drum, but we have to remember, yeah, times are tough for our taxpayers. I understand that. I'm a taxpayer. But the inflation and the economic pressures that they're facing are also factors that we as a county have to deal with in order to continue to provide the level of service that our constituents expect and have a right to expect. And we just have to figure out a way to balance that so they pay a little more when it costs us a little more. So I guess I understand what you're saying, Mike. Nobody loves every aspect of every budget we pass. And I've held my nose in past years and voted for budgets that included some stinky things that I didn't like, but I can't do it this year. So I'm sorry, I'm going to be the nasty person that votes no. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thanks, Deb.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, let's do a roll call.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
No.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes,
We have 12 ayes, 1 no.
that passes. Congratulations, everyone. Okay. Yes, Lee, did you have any more to report for budget?
I think that's enough.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so Amanda Champion, we have Tamara, I think, was here. Maybe she, okay, she probably had to leave. And then Steve DeWitt is here. And so why don't we move to government operations? And then after that, we'll take a quick break.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and start with Resolution N, scheduling a special election in Legislative District Number 3, City of Ithaca. And I would move that.
Okay, seconded by Veronica Pillar.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have to do this. Since Henry is no longer with us, I believe it's scheduled for January 24th, and if there are questions, Steve can answer them.
Hi, Steve. Okay, are there any comments, questions? Veronica?
I guess question for Steve, because some folks have asked me, when can people expect to see the schedule of deadlines associated with this election, like for petitioning and such?
Steve, we can't hear you. Oh.
Steve, we still can't hear you. If you go to the little microphone icon in the bottom left of your Zoom screen, there's a little upward arrow. And if you click that upward arrow, you can select a different microphone.
This work? Is this
Yep,
better?
you're working now.
Thank you. What happens is once you declare or proclaim that the election will be held on January 24th, once we get a copy of the resolution, which I'm sure Kathy Covert can get to us very quickly, we then will establish the political calendar. It's essentially been established, but we just have to have the resolution passed. And then we will mail that out. It will be posted on our website. We'll be mailing it out to the 4 party chairs and letting them know what the procedure is for ballot access. And certainly if they have any questions, they can contact us and we'll let them know.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Lee Shirtliff?
Steve, just remind me, if the major parties are going to make a nomination, they do it as a committee for a special election and an independent can petition?
Yeah, the independent, there is an independent nominating component. It starts, well, if you proclaim tonight, it's tomorrow. Same thing with the parties doing their nomination based on whatever their party rules are. And, I know I think with the Democrat and Republican parties, they're done by certificate of nomination. And those all have to be done by November 28th.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Steve DeWitt? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Do you want me to keep going? Or okay. Okay, so Resolution O, designation of a newspaper, 11161, and I will move that.
Seconded by Randy Brown.
And this is our yearly ritual. Thank you.
Shotgun marriage.
And we had some nice speeches at government operations, so if you want to hear the speeches, you could go back and watch that, unless people need to give their speeches tonight. We have to, every year, designate a daily newspaper for all our notices and publications to be put in. And our newspaper that we have is the Ithaca Journal.
Randy Brown.
Just a question, Amanda. Is it a state law that has to be a daily paper?
I think so. Yeah. State, yeah.
Mike Lane.
As I did last year, I'm voting against it, out of protest. It seems to be a Rochester newspaper.
So I will comment. I actually voted against it last year, and then as we were doing the vote, I got scared that it might not pass and that we might be in some type of trouble if it didn't pass. And so this year I'm actually going to vote for it because I think it could be close again.
I'm going to count the votes, and if it looks like it's going to pass anyway, then I can vote.
Okay.
You could slowly raise your.
Okay. Okay. Greg Mezzi.
I'll save my speech, but we did, just crisply, we did touch on GO maybe having a conversation or putting something together, a resolution of sorts requesting our friends in Albany maybe do something about this because this is antiquated, and there's multiple sources of notification, and we should be able to have a print, a digital, a digital public square, of some sort where we can put these type of things. But we want to make this more accessible, not less accessible. And this is not necessarily always the most accessible way to get information. So hopefully in GO we can work on that as one of our priorities in the next year. So we no longer have to have speeches about the designation of a local
we'll newspaper. Still have speeches.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, Deb and Sigler.
Yeah, I really appreciate that suggestion, Greg, because given the consolidation within the news media industry at large and the fact that the areas that are really affected by that are largely rural areas like most of Tompkins County, I think Albany really needs to take that into account. So thanks for that suggestion.
Mike Sigler.
I'm going to vote no again, as I do every year.
You always do.
So I'm going to side with Mike on this. I kind of would like to see what the state does to us, to be honest with you. Sometimes I think you just need to push, because it's kind of like, if a tree falls in a forest. Right now, we put this in the newspaper. Nobody reads the newspaper. Nobody reads the Ithaca Journal, anyway. Dan does.
Lead us.
That's your strength.
So maybe Dan should start a blog, and we should pay Dan to start the blog, and then he can report this.
Okay, any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. All those noes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Does not pass.
Oh,
We need 8.
We need 8.
they'd like to change their vote.
Making Kathy's life
No, I want to see what happens, and then I'm going to blame Mr. Sigler.
Okay.
Right.
Can't do it in 2 weeks from now.
Well, thank you all.
Okay, well, that was fun.
Mike Lane?
When's the deadline for us doing it?
Yeah, I would just say that we have our protest tonight, but we can't hamstring our our staff and who have to place these things. So I would hope that this would come back again, because we have to comply with state law.
So any one of us who voted against it could bring it back for reconsideration at the next meeting?
Either this evening or the next meeting.
Oh, well, hell.
Deborah?
Yeah, let's reconsider it.
Okay.
I'll vote for it this time.
Can we have a mover?
I moved it.
Okay. Seconder? Seconded by Mike Lane. Okay. Do we want to read the resolution again?
No. No.
Okay.
More speeches?
No.
Any comments? Veronica?
I guess a question, what would happen if we passed a resolution designating a non-daily newspaper?
It wouldn't comply with the state law.
So we would still be getting our staff in a pickle somehow?
We'd still have messed up.
Mike Lane?
We do put our legal notices in the weeklies. We don't have to, but we still do that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
This is the motion to reconsider.
Motion to reconsider. 1, 2,
Just voting for the motion to reconsider? Okay.
12. That's all of us. Oh, 13.
Who voted no?
Any no's?
Reconsider.
This is to reconsider. Okay. That was unanimous. Yes. Okay.
So now we have to vote again.
Yep. Let's
Okay.
go ahead and vote again. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Deborah Dawson, seconded by Amanda Champion. Any discussion?
This is on the resolution.
This is on the resolution. Yep. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's 10 ayes. All of those against? 1, 2, 3. 10 to 3.
was fun.
That passes.
That was fun. That'll show.
What'd you say, Rick?
That'll show them.
That'll show them. Now
Okay.
they're shaking in their boots and all.
So let's see here. We just have a few more committee.
Wait, I think.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just a couple things from Geo. That was very fun. Thank you. We met a week and a half ago. Most of the things we discussed, we went through already on our agenda. We did have a brief discussion about the possibility of legislator term limits. Bill Troy brought us some details. It was a calm and non-robust conversation, but it was fine. And in general, it seemed like people were willing to talk about it, but not necessarily move forward with that. So we did our duty and we spoke about it. If folks do want to bring it forward again, we can have more conversation. And then the last thing I wanted to report was at the Library Board of Trustees meeting today, we got a report from the Friends of the Library whose book sale ended a month ago, I guess, or several weeks ago. Through that building passed 219,263 items. And just for reference, our public library holds 227,000 items. So nearly a whole library passed through that building.
Half of which came from my house.
Most of them came from Deborah. They raised about $246,000. And the majority of that will go to the library, as well as, I think they also provide some smaller grants to other libraries and other organizations. So it's a huge event that happens twice a year, and we're really lucky to have that supporting our library. And I think that's it. So thanks.
Thank you. And what is the will of the legislature? Do we want to continue to do, we have 5 more committees, or do we want to take a quick break?
Short break.
Okay. We have 5 topics for executive session. Okay, let's go ahead and take a short break now. It's 7:53. Why don't we convene back at 8?
think you'd be
Because she's
okay.
not car sick anymore. And I
You'll
think
be
it
okay
mellows
then.
her out a little bit. And so, yeah, you can take this and it works for 24 hours. So we're just going to dose her for the 3 days to get down there.
Yeah.
She's fine.
That's awesome.
Hey, what's up?
When we moved up here from Texas, we had two cats who've since passed on. But we had two of those big crates.
The truth is, Mayor, the city attorney.
And
Basically,
the guy,
Our beach towels
yeah,
over it.
yeah. And because I think if they can't see, and once the car started moving,
Yeah, they can't see anything, but yet there's enough air.
right.
Is that better if they can't see? I've wondered if one of my cats
It
wants to
depends
see,
on the cat.
but, okay.
I've had cats that are actually better like on my lap.
Yeah.
But I try not to do that. But some cats want to see.
Yes.
Like
When
our
you're
cat,
driving from Dallas to Ithaca, you don't want to kill them.
Yeah, our cat Buddha wants
I
to
wouldn't
see.
want-
Look
I-
out the window.
yeah.
But Buttercup, she does better when you cover her whole day.
But my-
because it's dark.
But my point was,
Somebody, people interested in
these two.
public election.
And we had
Sue?
rules,
Jim again?
put them in the car, in the back of the car with the towels over. And of course, they were complaining. The minute the car started, they were just like,
I'm getting a report that the mics are live, but I'm not sure if it's to the Zoom or to the public. I can't hear you. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, everyone, if we could come back, it is 8:01. Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with, let's see here. The next committee would be Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And if we could hear from either Ann Corman or Veronica Pillar, that would be great.
I'll take it this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
We did not have a meeting of WDIC since our last legislative meeting. We do have another meeting, our next and final meeting of the year on December 7th. And what's on the agenda so far is an update from the attendees of the Facing Race Conference, including Veronica Pillar, who's going in person. The Workplace Demographics Report from HR, a review update of the WDIC bylaws, review of the 2022 goals, and start working on the 2023 goals.
Okay.
That's all I have for that committee.
Okay. Any questions for Ann Corman or Veronica Pillar? Thank you both very much. Next, Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
Thank you, Shauna. The Public Safety Committee has not met since our last meeting, but will be doing so this Thursday, November 17th at 3 o'clock. I have one resolution, Resolution M, to accept the 2022-2023 New York State Department of Criminal Justice DCJS Discovery Grant, ID 11212, and I would move it.
Seconded by Veronica Pillar. Would you like to talk to the resolution, Rich?
This is money we are receiving from New York State to help defray the cost related to the changes to the discovery rules in criminal proceedings. We have a far greater responsibility to maintain and produce records, including body camera footage. And this has led to increased costs at the Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Office, and Department of Emergency Response. This money goes towards that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you.
I did have a couple other things I just wanted to share with the legislature. At our meeting on Thursday, we will be getting a report on proposals at New York State related to ambulance service. And given that we have added a position, the EMS program manager, we wanted to get some information on what are the possible funding sources that could help us in addressing that issue. So hopefully there'll be some useful news from that direction. We will also be having a discussion related to a visit we made to the jail last week to observe the conditions. And thank you to the sheriff and to Arel and Captain Bunce for leading us through the facility. As you all know, we are spending some money on improvements to the jail right now, and these are stopgap measures because we just couldn't wait any longer. Prior to the pandemic, we were starting to seriously consider a major renovation of the jail, not necessarily making it bigger, but improving its function in several different ways. Because of the pandemic, we determined to make some repairs that we just could not avoid. And these are running to the extent of approximately $4 million. And if we could just stop there, that would be great. But what we have is a facility that is largely has outlived its useful life. This building was built in 1986, or commissioned in 1986, and has operated 24/7 since then, and it's really showing its age. Our discussion that we're going to have on Thursday is whether we wish to cycle back and look at proposing some significant new construction at the jail to increase its functionality. And this would mean better medical facilities, better programming rooms, better visiting facilities, classrooms, and building a pod system, which is a much more efficient and frankly better way to supervise inmates. You have far more visibility, and it's a better environment overall. The key determinant, I believe, that has led us to consider that we have to have this conversation is that we've been talking about doing something with our jail. Arel Lamaro, our facilities director, indicated he remembers these discussions happening in the late 1990s, and we have continually gone back to it. And each time, the price tag has scared us. And so we have waited. And in fact, each time we've waited, the price tag has gone up significantly. Realizing that delay will probably only increase the cost more, we want to take a serious look at, is this the time to do so? It would involve amending our capital plan to bring this back into the program. And so is a pretty serious decision because it's going to be a lot of money. One bright spot is that if we are careful in how we address this, we could probably get the benefit of the capital improvements we're doing right now to the tune of about 80% of the expense. So there's a lot to consider there, and we're going to have a discussion about that on Thursday. So that's a pretty important element. Other than that, I just wanted to mention our jail numbers. We're holding 47 people and 2 board outs. Happy to try to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rich John? Okay. Thank you, Rich. Next is Health and Human Services Committee. Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you. Our next committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 21st at 3 o'clock. There are 2 presentations that we will be having at this meeting. One is from the Tompkins County Department of Planning and Sustainability Housing Program Overview and Recommendations. So this is our newish housing planner. And also a presentation from the Human Services Coalition. Sort of a plan, report, proposal. I'm not sure how to characterize it yet. I just heard about it today for the first time. That has to do with how to address homelessness here in Tompkins County. And the name of this presentation is Home Together Tompkins. So those are the 2 things to look forward to at our meeting.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Any questions? Randy Brown?
Yeah, Dan, I'm not sure you're the person to answer the question, but I believe we approved a homelessness coordinator for where will that person report? Will that be a social service person or?
Admin, I think. Lisa, do you want to say more?
We'll report to county administration because the person will be coordinating the county's efforts, which would include Department of Social Services, mental health, planning, sheriff, the one who has a hand in the issue.
Any other questions for Dan Klein? Okay, thanks, Dan. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Yeah, we haven't met since our last legislature meeting. We will meet this coming Thursday, November 17th at 9:00 a.m. Just a couple things I wanted to mention. I've reported before about the committee's actions taking a look at the security of our buildings, including the cameras. And I talked to you about what we had done at the Human Services Complex. Well, we've also targeted this building, and we've now, through the auspices of our Facilities Committee, or not committee, Facilities Department, have added cameras here. And that includes in the chambers here. So you should be aware of that.
Going to tell us where they are so we can avoid them?
You can't come in on the weekend and do karaoke anymore.
You can, but someone might be watching.
But, you know, these are for security purposes, obviously, just like the ones outside the building. The other thing I wanted to mention, and actually Ann has already mentioned it, and that's the press conference by the county clerk and the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles up at the airport. We have been trying very hard
at DMV, right?
Airport. Right.
Oh, I thought it was held downtown. Okay, good to know it's at the airport.
That's my understanding. Because they're trying to get the word out about the change in requirements for driver's licenses. When you board a plane, they have to be the real ID licenses going forward, or passports, and not just the standard driver's licenses that a lot of people have. But anyway, what I wanted to mention is that we've been trying very hard to get a CDL license testing facility at some unused land at the airport, and that was in our airport grant request to the state, which was not funded. But we are going to continue to try to find some funding for that. It's not a hugely expensive project once we get it going, but it could be a revenue source for us to be able to rent out the facilities, not only for, say, TCAD and bus drivers, but for school bus drivers or commercial vehicle drivers. And it would save having to take their large vehicles to Syracuse or Binghamton to have their tests done. So we've been trying to do that for several years, but we're going to continue to try to get that, and maybe we can ask the commissioner whether there's any funding available through DMV to help us. Randy, anything else you wanted to mention? That's all I have.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike Lane? Thank you. Next is Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
Thanks, I'll take that one too. Let's see, we're nearing the end here at least for this stuff here. We did not meet since our last meeting, since our last legislative meeting. Our next PDEC meeting is Monday on the 28th of this month at 1:30 here in the chambers, and we don't have our agenda yet, but I wanted to just say just one note here that the Director of Materials and Recycling, Barbara Ekstrom, was recognized, was given an award by the town gown, or at the town gown ceremony, for her years of work in sustainability. So I just wanted to put a shout out to that, to recognize that, and we're very proud of all the work she's done.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Annie, for bringing that forth.
Oh, just one more quick thing. I got a text saying that our, I don't know if our audio or video, but our audio wasn't off on the break, so people out in Zoom land got to hear about Deborah and my cats. Buttercup, Dot, and Dash. So just
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any individual member filed resolutions? See none. Rich John?
I don't have a member filed resolution, but I was asked to provide an update from the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency, and with the indulgence of the chair, I would do so.
Sure.
The IDA met on November 9th, 2022, and we took several steps that may be of interest to the legislature. One, we had a discussion about fund balance at the IDA and whether there were places we wanted to apply that money for economic development purposes. We did take a vote and used $100,000 to add to, I believe there's some county money, city money, DIA money for wayfinding signage in the county. And we also considered and approved 2 projects for tax abatements. One is the Cliff Street Retreat. This is the old Encodema building on Cliff Street. And pardon me, the Gateway Lofts conversion at the base of State Street. And we also received a presentation on a new application for a housing development on Cherry Street called The Hive, which will be going to public hearing.
Any questions or comments for Rich? Dan Klein?
Can you repeat the first thing, something you said? Did you say the IDA gave money from its fund balance for the wayfinding project?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. $100,000, you said?
Yes.
Would you like to further comment?
Perhaps we should talk after the meeting. I'm curious to know.
It's already done, right?
The money has not been dispersed.
Voted.
We did vote. We could vote again.
I have nothing to say.
Okay. Now we all want to know. Okay. Let's see here. We do not have minutes from a previous meeting available right now. Is there any, we do have executive session. Can I have a motion to go into executive session? Moved by What?
Discuss.
Yep, to discuss real estate litigation, collective bargaining negotiations, and 2.
Want to do minutes?
We don't have the
Oh,
minutes
I'm
ready.
sorry.
Yep. And 2 personnel matters. We will not be taking action.
I will make that motion.
Thank you. Seconded by Greg Mezzi. And if we could vote on that, please. Raise your hand. All those in favor? That is Sigler, your hand up? Okay, that's everyone. Thank you. Why don't we take a 5-minute?
Personnel matters are about particular people, right?
They are. Thank you, Mike. Why don't we take 5 minutes and reconvene at 8:25?